everyone, this is Andrew
And Carrie
with Everwood Creations.
Today we are going to take a look at how to zero a CNC machine before you begin carving.
We are using an Axiom precision for this demonstration. The technique you use to control your machine can vary depending on the model of CNC you are using.
For example, our CNC has a handheld control unit, while others hook directly to a computer for control. We began our CNC journey on a Shapeoko which uses such a method. We will try to cover both methods as well as we can, but make sure you leave any additional questions you may have down in the comments below. The first thing you will want to know is where your cutting file has the zero set to. When in the software, you are generally given the choice of zeroing to any of the four corners or the center. When we first started, the general advice was to zero to the left corner closest to the front of the machine. We have found, through our experience, that we much prefer zeroing to the center of the material. It's a matter of personal preference, though.
We have chosen to use the center zero method to avoid the additional hassle of accounting for the diameter of the bit. And it gives us the freedom of knowing that you zeroed to the center of the design to be carved, thus allowing you to easily position it wherever you choose on the material, even if the design isn't meant to be centered on the workpiece.
The next problem you will face will be how to hold down your material while carving. Some of you may be lucky enough to have a vacuum hold down option, but for the rest of us, other hold downs will need to be used. Several options are available to you, including hold downs like the ones we are using, which slide on a track on the machine bed, others may need to create their own tracks or screws like we did on our Shapeoko back in the day. Another option is to use double-sided tape between the bed and your material to hold it tight.
Double stick tape will work in many instances, but not all. If you are using a bit that has an upcut spiral to its geometry, there could be too much force for the tape to hold your material solidly. Also, it is important to remember if using tape that it needs to be evenly distributed on the back of your workpiece, so that you have raised the material surface uniformly across its entire area.
Creating a template to hold a piece is another method we have used to great effect. Now we need to get our material on the machine bed. If you have zeroed to the center, it is best to mark the center of your material before securing it to the machine. We like to use the X method, where we place a ruler from one corner to the opposite corner and draw a line in the center. Then switch the ruler to the other corners and do the same. The result should be an X directly in the center of the material. You can do this with a square block of wood as we are here, but also with smaller areas within the material if you don't want the design in the exact center, like on a furniture piece where some of the material may be covered by other components. If you are zeroing to a corner, this step is not necessary. And now we are ready to turn on the machine. Once powered on, you can begin the zeroing process by homing your machine.
Homing your machine is a very important step in this process. The way that a CNC program works is by providing exact coordinates to the machine, telling it where it needs to position the cutter. These coordinates are in the form of the X, Y, and Z axis in relation to the home position. For the majority of machines, this home position is in the front left corner of the cutting area. When you send your machine through a homing cycle, it intentionally runs the stepper motors to their maximum extent in each of the axis directions. It knows when it has reached these maximums by hitting stops that are installed on the machine. For your program to function properly, the machine must be run through a homing cycle before you begin, or the software will just have no idea where the cutter head actually is located at any given time.
Once the homing process is finished, you will want to manually move the cutter out of the way. And now we are ready to secure the material to the machine. It doesn't matter if the material is in the exact center, it simply needs to be within the cutting area of your machine. This is because we are going to tell the machine where the material is by setting the zero.
What is important when securing the workpiece to the machine is that it is aligned with the X and Y axis of the machine. To do this, we place the material on the bed of the machine within the cutting area, and then hold it down lightly on one corner. We then bring the bit in from the side and touch it to one corner of the material. Now you can run the bit straight down the X-axis and align the opposite corner on the same side of the material to it. Now the workpiece can be secured to the machine, and we have ensured that it is aligned to the axes of the machine.
With your material held down securely and a double check to make sure your hold downs will not be in the way of the carving process, you should securely insert the appropriate bit into the machine. Now this is where the differences of the machine start to come in. For our machine, we will use the handheld controller to move the bit towards our X in the center of the material. These buttons will move the bit along the X and Y axis.
Most machines have a fast and slow option that you can choose when moving the cutter head manually.
You want to move the bit as close to the mark on the material as possible. Once over the general area, you can begin lowering the bit using the Z-axis. As the bit gets closer to the material, check from all directions to make sure the bit is perfectly aligned with your mark. To ensure we get as close to the material as possible without actually plunging into it, we like to use the paper technique. We simply place a piece of paper on the material and take the bit down in tiny increments, moving the paper a bit while we do it. At some point, the paper will stop moving, and that tells us that the bit is close enough to the material. A last check that the bit is perfectly placed over the mark on the material, and we are ready to set 0 by pressing both the XY0 button and the Z0 button.
If you choose to zero to the front corner of your workpiece, you will need to account for the diameter of your bit if using an end mill or ball cutter. To do this, you will need to divide the diameter in half and then touch both sides of the corner with the bit. You will then raise your bit above the piece and move it in both the X and Y direction, that half diameter measurement that you came up with. Now the center of the bit should be hovering over the exact point of the corner on your workpiece, and you can set your XY0.
The same procedure will work for a CNC hooked up to a computer, but instead of pushing buttons on a controller, you'll be using your mouse or keyboard to adjust the bit's position on a computer screen. Once in position, the software should have a way to set the 0 with a button.
Before you hit go, it is important to check your speed setting. On a Shapeoko or similar machine that is using a removable router as its motor, there will usually be a speed adjustment dial on the router itself. On a machine like ours, there is a VFD dial, which stands for Variable Frequency Drive. You will want to make sure that whatever speed you calculated for your feeds and speeds is set on the machine before you run the file, as this is something that is controlled externally and not by software in most instances.
Now you are ready to load in your cutting file and hit go. We hope this video will help you understand the zeroing process a little better.
As all machines are unique, there may be additional steps you need to take, or some you don't. Like if you have a zero-in puck, which takes much of the manual work out of this process.
As always, feel free to put any questions you may have in the comments, and hopefully we or someone in our community can help you out. If there are other CNC videos you'd like to see, put those down in the comments as well. We really like hearing from you. And until next time, have fun
and stay safe in the shop.